They're taking on Bastecki, Coval, and Manges. As we mentioned, 2 invitational winners on the team of Bastecki, Coval, and Manges. Bastecki and Coval. Also both players judges, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a correlation there, but start judging, you'll win an invitational. That's all I can come up with. Start here from Hobbs on Ancient Ziggurat into Noble Hierarch, and Coval's just going to lead on Snow-Covered Island, Pyrite Spellbomb, Mox Opal.
Yeah, really wanted that, the third artifact to liven up that Mox Opal.
Sure.
Be able to use the Spellbomb right away, get the mana acceleration off the table, but just didn't have it.
Nice start here from Hobbs.
Great start. We watched Brian play yesterday, and it's funny because the match that we watched, his deck just kind of pooped out on him. He didn't do much.
Right.
And it was, I guess, a disappointing representation of the deck.
Yeah, I think that's true, and we don't know this for sure, but we believe that may have been Coval's only loss, actually.
Yeah, that's what's funny is he's actually crushing with this deck, and then we got him on camera. It looked very anemic when we saw it, so we're giving him another chance here. Yeah,
Coval did do a deck tech with Nick Miller. We'll have that for you ready at some point in the day. So if you want to learn more about his thought process on this Grixis Urza deck, definitely stay tuned for that. His list is a little different from some of the other Grixis Urza lists we've seen.
Yeah, I thought that his deck had more four-ofs, more of the clunky cards, so to speak, than I thought it would have. But those are also the most powerful cards in the deck, so there is an argument to be made for just trying to draw those as consistently as possible.
Yeah, only 2 copies of Whir of Invention in Coval's deck, which I think is different from most players who have adopted this archetype.
So with the board we're looking at here, the Humans player is wondering how best to bait out this Pyrite Spellbomb.
Right, definitely a focus. Want to get that removal spell off the battlefield. But man, this is a nice human start. 4 creatures already on the battlefield. Champion of the Parish growing large. Noble Hierarch ready to pump that Champion of the Parish. This is a quick clock backed up by the disruption in the form of Thalia and Meddling Mage. This is the game plan Humans loves to execute. And we do hear that Meddling Mage is naming Thopter Foundry. Coval going to go ahead and blow up that Pyrite Spellbomb. That's going to take out Thalia. Champion of the Parish still going to get in for a little damage. Post-combat Noble Hierarch going to put an Ether Vial onto the battlefield.
Yeah, the turn 3 Ether Vial is not the most exciting card. But on the human side, you're still happy with it. As the game progresses, it opens up your Horizon lands. You can just cash them in and still deploy your humans that you draw. Ooh.
Well, there is a big get for this Grixis Urza deck. It's the namesake card. Urza hitting the battlefield, bringing with it a construct, big body to do some blocking, as well as that incredibly powerful activated ability from Urza. There you see Urza, Lord High Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you're creating a 0/0 construct token with +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Tap an untapped artifact, add blue 5, shuffle your library, exile a top card. Until end of turn, play that card without paying its mana cost. Of course, infinite combo alongside Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek.
Yeah, and obviously the Meddling Mage is jamming up that combo right now.
Yep.
But there's still a lot of other great things that you can do with Urza. Just having access to all of that mana. When your opponent's trying to disrupt you, with things like Thalia, getting that big body and all that mana is just huge.
Yeah. Yeah, huge mana explosion Urza creates. You see 4 artifacts on the battlefield, plus a Mox Opal, 5 if you want to count that. But it's the 4 that are now able to add mana. That's going to allow that activated ability from Urza to come online as well, much quicker than you believe. I've played a bunch against these Grixis Urza decks. They are tough. They're a tough out. They grind really well. They can be explosive. This is an archetype with some legs as we move forward in this new modern format. And you see Hobbs head on hand, wondering how he's going to deal with the powerful legend.
Yeah, we thought this was a pretty explosive start out of him, but if he's not able to grow one of his humans bigger than this construct and bigger than Urza, then he's pretty stymied on his side of the board.
Would love to find something like Reflector Mage, and has it. That can answer that construct. Is that the play from Hobbs? Or does he need to get Urza off the battlefield? I think there's a consideration just taking a turn off Urza. We'll have to see what Hobbs chooses.
Yeah, I think I want to get the construct off of the board and just start being able to crash into the red zone with more creatures.
That's my instinct as well.
And I would hate to bounce that Urza, not close out the game in the next turn.
And have it come back
and
down.
then have it be deployed onto the board again. Bring another construct with it.
Ooh, Hobbs disagrees, though, and Urza is going to return to Coval's hand.
All right, offers a trade, 5/5 for 5/5.
And the trade is going to be made. That tells me Coval thinks he can win a little bit longer game. Going to cash in that Mishra's Bauble. Takes a look at Hobbs' top card. Extra draw coming for Coval. Found a land with the first draw. Didn't quite catch the second. Let's see what Coval has to offer on this turn. Coval, of course, an invitational winner with the modern version of Death and Taxes. Not a deck we see much these days. Coval made a very wise metagame call in the invitational he won. Let's see if he's making another wise metagame call today with this Grixis Urza deck.
Yeah, speaking to him about this deck, he really thinks this deck is super unfair. He thinks it's on a power level with some of the Hogak decks that we've seen. He's able to play a bunch of hateful artifacts, graveyard hate artifacts in his main deck, and they still synergize with the rest of what his deck's trying to do.
Yeah, he's got a Grafdigger's Cage in the main deck. He's got a Tormod's Crypt in the main deck. And, of course, that Nile Spellbomb you see on the battlefield right now. So 3 main deck graveyard hate cards with ways to both find them and recycle them. And Goblin Engineer can get multiple activations out of those artifacts. Obviously, also packing Whirlwind Invention to be able to search that up, should he choose.
Yeah, and Whirlwind of Invention is a nice workaround of the Meddling Mage. Definitely something to keep in mind as this game moves forward. He'll be able to put his combo together.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Hobbs just looking to get back onto the battlefield. Knows Urza able to come back down next turn. Here's Thalia's Lieutenant. That's a good way to create a clock. The beats are coming fast now. Reflector Mage still in hand for Hobbs.
Yeah, that's a serious turn there.
He might have found a nice spot here. Let's see if he's able to convert these last few points of damage. We anticipate Coval will use his turn to cast Urza. Maybe he knows something's up, though. Let's see.
Yeah, with Brian taking all of this damage this turn, if he deploys Urza again next turn, it's going to tie up almost all of his mana. And then it just gets bounced to his hand again. Alpha Strike from the creatures, and he can't recast the Urza in the face of the Reflector Mage.
Yeah, maybe he needs to look for something like Ensnaring Bridge here. Shrink the hand size a little bit, prevent those creatures from attacking.
He does have a lot of cards in his grip right now.
He does. Believe we're looking at 4. Well, we're doing some tapping. 4 mana. Step 1 is Urza. Going to go ahead and make that construct. Is there a follow-up? Coval's doing a little counting here. Tap that Astrolabe.
Okay, Scrap Trawler.
Interesting. One of Scrap Trawler in Coval's deck. This is a card I have not seen included in these Grixis Urza decks before.
Yeah, it's just another piece of kind of an infinite loop. Once you use your Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, and you've got Urza to go through your whole deck, you can actually close out the game that very turn with Scrap Trawler and Pyrite Spellbomb.
Nice little pickup there. Also, obviously a fine value card where much of your deck is artifacts.
Yeah, no, this will be a decent turn for him if he's able to trade the Scrap Trawler with another creature, rebuy that Pyrite Spellbomb as another removal spell, and you know, work his way through the turn that way.
With Coval at 9 right now, you have to think Hobbs is trying to figure out if he can push through lethal. We know he had the Reflector Mage in hand. Obviously, his ability to win this game on this turn will depend on what his draw was.
Yeah, this is another very interesting Reflector Mage decision. We thought maybe he should bounce the Construct last time. He went after Urza. He has the exact same decision tree this time. All of his creatures are a little bit bigger this time around. Again, I think bouncing the Construct so that doesn't trade with one of your bigger creatures is pretty enticing line to take.
Hobbs disagreed last time. Let's see how he feels this time. Thinking about how he wants to deploy. Looks like it is going to be an Ether Vial activation. Here comes Reflector Mage. It's going to target Urza again. Hobbs not a fan of your lines, Craig.
Well, there is a reason that he's down there and I'm up here.
Very true. What is the last card in hand for Hobbs? Looks like we're headed to combat. Here's an attack from everyone. Maybe, yeah. Maybe. I bet this is not a final attack. We're just doing some hypotheticals presently.
Yeah. Hobbs seeing like what's the best case scenario, worst case scenario here. Obviously, with Brian at 9, he can't just block quote optimally because there will be enough damage left over to finish him off. So he's going to have to make some less optimal blocks where he's going to lose some more creatures.
Maybe a little bit of an information leak here from Hobbs. Looks like this is going to be the attack. Everyone's shipping. He's allowing Coval to maybe change up the blocks he made for him if he so chooses. I do think that champion has to be blocked, right?
I don't know if the champion has to be blocked, but
okay,
it's definitely
this works too.
One of the bigger creatures. Yep. Now the question is, if the Scrap Trawler dies, is this construct going to shrink to a size where it will die post-combat? And I think it's going to stay a 4/4 here.
Looks like it will live, correct. That Scrap Trawler is going to get a rebuy, though. Looks like Pyrite Spellbomb is the card coming back to Coval's hand.
But he took a mess of damage there.
He did, going to live at just 2 life. Unable to deploy Urza here.
Yep, can't play Urza.
We know he's got Pyrite Spellbomb in hand. Can he find other help from his deck? Here's the Thopter Foundry.
Okay, and that's a big one.
Yeah, Tormod's Crypt. Pyrite Spellbomb. Going to be able to make plenty of chump blockers on this turn is Coval.
And you see that Tormod Crypt, very bad in this matchup, still going to be cashed in for a life and a token.
Absolutely. Got a result from one of our other matches. You see Bertarioni up a game. Mardu Death Shadow continues to perform for Bertarioni. Only 1 copy of that Mardu Death Shadow deck into day 2. We saw a few looks at it yesterday, but only Bertarioni playing it today.
Yeah, I really like the way he tuned his deck. The mana base looks very polished. The numbers in the deck, they make a lot of sense. Not a whole lot of extra fluff there in that deck.
We were over in the feature match area last round watching him play, and we saw the sequence of Dreadhorde Arcanist recasting Unearth, putting Ranger Captain of Eos into play, going to get Death Shadow, and my jaw kind of dropped. That's a lot of value.
Not bad to get that out of your little 1/3
Yeah.
drop. Yeah.
Good attack. Here's an activation on Ether Vial for 4. It's going to bring down Restoration Angel, blinking that Reflector Mage. There goes the construct.
Yeah, this is one you don't see very often.
Yeah, an occasional inclusion in these humans deck. I have seen it a few times in those flex slots, sometimes occupied by Kessick Malcontents, other random cards that this human deck occasionally plays. But right now, it looks like Hobbs is high on Restoration Angel. Here comes 2 attackers for Hobbs. It's going to be Champion of the Parish and Noble Hierarch. And Coval's going to get to making some chump blockers.
So the Nile Spellbomb's interesting here because he's sacrificing it for the Thopter effect.
Yep.
But he can also still pay
draw
the
a card.
black to draw the card off of it.
Yeah, very nice. And only 1 block going to be made for Coval. Going to go ahead and block that Champion of the Parish. Here's a follow-up Meddling Mage. And we'll figure out what that's naming in just a moment.
Yeah, I think the easiest name here is just Urza.
I think so.
You know it's in the grip. You bounced it like 30 different times this game.
It is, in fact, Urza being named by that Meddling Mage. Cutting off Coval from a lot of options here. It looks like Coval just going to ship the turn back after having played a land.
And this is just, to me, this is such a typical humans game where they're pressuring your life total and just the right amount of disruption. The Reflector Mage is just the right amount of mana war with the Time Walk attached to it. The Meddling Mage, always good. Sometimes it's the Kite Sail Freebooter. We saw the early Thalia.
I think you have to give respect to Hobbs for how he's used his Reflector Mages this game. I think the intuitive thing to do is just throw them at that construct. But I do think Hobbs has reaped some dividends by targeting Urza, preventing Coval from really generating any kind of card advantage with the card, a huge mana turn. All those things were taken away by Hobbs' aggressive use of Reflector Mage. Here's an aggressive card, Thalia's Lieutenant, going to go ahead and pump the team. Champion of the Parish getting real big. All these creatures lacking evasion, though. Restoration Angel has flying, but that doesn't matter when you're dealing with a Thopter Foundry. Let's see if Coval can find the blocks to stay alive. Cashing in a bunch of artifacts now. Getting the appropriate number of counters on the Noble Hierarch. Hobbs just missed that when the Thalia's Lieutenant came down.
And this is funny, that this Grixis Urza's deck, you see the diminishing returns when it doesn't have the combo. It's just kind of clawing, trying to hang on by its fingernails before it can get to the finish line here.
Just the sword of the meek away, though, from being able to make plenty of chump blockers. Let's see if we can get there for Coval. And then does he have enough mana to convert? Because he's facing a lot of lethal attackers now. Here's the draw from Coval.
Yeah, there's only 1 sword in the deck. Obviously, there's the Whir of Inventions to go get it. But that would tie up a lot of mana, having to whir for it.
Yeah. Here's an Astrolabe.
In a pretty tight spot.
I do think he lives if he found it with that draw step, but you're right. Very tight spot. Tapping 2 mana. What's the play? Another Thopter Foundry. Not the 2-drop we were looking for there for Coval.
What a tease.
I thought he did it for a moment. Well, let's see if he can find a way to survive another turn. Another result from this match. You see Dominic Harvey now up a game over Alex Bastecki. Bridgevine over Is It Phoenix in game 1.
Now, Hobbs doing a lot of counting here. What he draws can change his decision here. But generally, you know, this. If he drew a blank, this is very straightforward. He's just jamming.
Got to be a little trepidation, though, from Hobbs playing against what's essentially a new archetype. You don't know if he knows every card in Coval's deck. Thinking about things that could potentially blow him out here. And it looks like it's going to be 4 attackers from Hobbs. Coval's going to get to work. Time to make some Thopters. Astrolabe hits the bin. Mox Opal hits the bin. Gaining a little bit of life. 3 life in total. 3 Thopters on the battlefield. Hobbs careful to protect that meddling mage, naming Urza.
He was careful, but I think it needed to get into the red zone here. He just would have closed out the game.
He would have deprived Coval of his last resource, would have had to cash in that Thopter Foundry as well. Here's a Whir of Invention. I don't know if Coval has enough mana. Well, he can go get Ensnaring Bridge here.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe Hobbs getting punished. I mean, this would have been a good draw regardless, right? He would have been able to deploy Ensnaring Bridge and maybe bought a little bit of turn.
Well, I think if the Thalia and the Meddling Mage got into the red zone last turn, that Brian did not have blocks where he could have lived. Maybe I'm mistaken. But at a minimum, it would have forced him to sacrifice that other Thopter Foundry.
Yeah, I think he lives if he sacrificed the other Thopter Foundry.
Yep.
Is my read on the situation.
But it's still a better situation to be in.
Right. Well, now we're in a spot where the only creature that can attack is Thalia's Lieutenant.
And this is kind of interesting. This Ensnaring Bridge, if Brian can just keep cards out of his hand for the rest of the game, this could jam him up real bad. All of the creatures are almost all too big. Oh, this is so funny. So he obviously can't play the Urza that's in his hand because of the Meddling Mage.
And he knows eventually that Thalia's Lieutenant will do the work. So just cashing in Snaring Bridge, making a block on Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yep, which is a 2/2 because of the trigger from the Noble Hierarch.
Absolutely. Yeah, was always going to have 1 card in hand. And there's a Noble Hierarch, too. That would have gotten around the Ensnaring Bridge anyway. So a good read from Coval there. Going to go ahead and fetch. Falls back down to 2. And again, in need of a miracle.
Yeah, I think it has to just be a natural draw of the sword here, right? Like, last turn he could have word for it, but it just tied up too much mana, and then he wouldn't have been able to make enough Thopters.
Yep.
Same situation this turn.
Yeah, drawing sword here is gain 6, make 6 blockers. Still going to have to find a way to turn the corner eventually, but much better chance of getting there if you find the sword. Here's the draw. It's the Serum Visions.
We got some redraws.
Takes his draw, going to do a little scrying. Both to the bottom. And didn't find what he was looking for. Jonathan Hobbs going to go up a game against Brian Coval. Clean sweep for the team of Harvey, Hobbs, and Bertarioni, all up a game presently. Let's head over to our sideboards now, take a look at what these players are working with. We'll start with Hobbs' side. There you see 4 Yixlid Jailers, 3 Auroch Champions, 2 Deputy of Detention, 2 Phyrexian Revokers, 2 Gaddock Teague, 1 Militia Bugler, and 1 Dismember. Craig, what are you doing if you're in Hobbs' seat?
So some of these cards are easy inclusions. I really like the Deputy of Detention. It's just a clean answer to tokens. It's good against all the artifacts. It's just a very versatile card. The Phyrexian Revoker seems like it's just too good against what the opponent's trying to do. So I expect that to be in the deck as well. There's probably some argument for the Dismember to come in. There's just a few key creatures that you want to pick off on the opponent's side of the board. And depending on how many cards he wants to cut from his deck, maybe this Militia Bugler comes in as well.
I think that's interesting. Any consideration to the Yixlid Jailer to shut down Thopter Sword combo?
So, yes and no. So my number one concern, if I'm looking at this matchup, is Urza just making too much mana, giving your opponent too many resources, and getting stuck under an Ensnaring Bridge. And obviously the Jailer is not great at fighting either of those avenues.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you pass on Jailer. I mean, maybe in small number, Hobbs will look to add some. But on the whole, there's other things you're concerned about, and you don't want to slow down your aggression too much. You saw the early aggression key there for Hobbs to eventually be able to convert. Meanwhile, over on Coval's side, we are dealing with 4 Leyline of the Void, 2 Fatal Push, 2 Galvanic Blast, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Psy, Master Thopterus, 2 Tezzeret, Agent of Bolus, and a Dead of Winter. That's the slam dunk here, I think. What else do you like over on Coval's side?
This is a great sideboard for this matchup. He's going to be able to take out all of those graveyard hate artifacts that we talked about that just don't do a whole lot in this matchup, and he's going to be able to transition to a much more streamlined controlling deck. So the Fatal Push, the Galvanic Blast, the Dead of Winter that you mentioned, I think Psy is going to be great in this matchup, just coming up the board and drawing a few extra cards. And all of these cards are very inexpensive. He's on the play, which is great, and I actually expect him to have a big edge in Game 2 here.
Yeah, very powerful options out of the sideboard for Brian Coval. Meanwhile, his teammate James Manges tied up his match against Jeremy Bertarioni, 1-1 in that match. So Coval's deck, a deck that certainly could not exist without the addition of Modern Horizons to the format, and Modern Horizons making its presence felt in all of these decks, quite frankly. Every single deck getting meaningful pickups. The format kind of turned on its head by the addition of not only Hogak, but a bunch of really powerful pickups for these other decks as well. Urza, a really impactful card. Aria of Flame, changing the Phoenix decks. There's basically hit after hit in Modern Horizons, and I think as the Hogak problem gets addressed, be it through bans or just effective metagaming, there will be more and more Modern Horizons cards seeing play in this format. A lot of these cards will be unlocked. And if you need to get your hands on some, you can head over to go.starcitygames.com/MH1. Get your order in today. I have been basically buying Modern Horizons nonstop, just opening boxes because I love this set so much. Building practice sealed pools, happily adding cards to my collection. Truly a home run is Modern Horizons, with a small little caveat that Hogak's a little too strong. Whatever. I mean, honestly, how could you fault them for really trying to bring a new look to Modern and succeeding and just pushing one card a little bit too far? I'd much rather they go hard than just have this set miss Modern entirely.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there where when they nerf the format a little bit, when they slow things down a little bit, right now it being you need to be doing something very impactful on turns 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
I think when it slows down a little bit, we will see a lot of these Modern Horizons cards just make a much bigger impact. A card like Renin 6, it's a 2-mana Planeswalker that has awesome abilities on it. All those abilities can be very relevant, but right now the format is just too fast for that. I can see that card just being huge in the future.
Absolutely, and to your point, it's already been very impactful in Legacy. Now, granted, there's Wasteland there, but in fact, it has more to do with Legacy being a slower format than Modern, which is kind of incredible. But so a nice start here from Coval. Plenty of artifacts on the battlefield. Started with Mox Opal, now have Mishra's Bauble, Arkham's Astrolabe, and a Thopter Foundry already at the ready.
Yeah, and he's threatening that combo right away.
Mm-hmm. See what Hobbs has for a turn 2 play. Had a great turn 1 play in the form of Ether Vial, but Coval equally explosive.
And there's a lot you have to think about if you're on Hobbs' side of the board. If my opponent just plays Goblin Engineer next turn, he's got the combo live. It's online. I actually can't turn that off. Same thing with War of Invention. It'll just get him there. So he has to wonder if his opponent has that, can he do anything about it? And if the answer is no, it's just let me put the fastest clock as possible onto the board.
Absolutely. Always a tension with this Humans deck. Do I try and disrupt? Do I try and just advance my clock? Hobbs going to do a little bit of both. It's Champion backed up by Thalia.
Man, that's so good. The Psy comes down, Artifact comes down, makes a token,
Plenty of blockers.
You know, at some point, all these extraneous artifacts can start getting cashed in for extra cards if he wants to.
Sai, a card that I've believed for a long time is just powerful enough for Modern. It's often been a change of pace from these artifact decks. We used to see it back in the KCI days, but this card is just good. It's good on its face.
Yeah, when you think that you're accelerating a little bit extra with Mox Opal, so potentially you can play it on turn 2, and then your deck's just full of 0 and 1 mana artifacts, so you're getting all these free Thopters out of it. It's like, yo, what's not to like about this card?
Absolutely. Meanwhile, over on Hobbs' side, we're seeing the clock accelerated dramatically with double Thalia's Lieutenant. Additional follow-ups, it looks like, from Hobbs here. Ether Vial really unlocking Hobbs' mana. It's a Noble Hierarch. We get even more pumps for these Lieutenants and Champion of the Parish, and that's a big body right there.
Yeah, this got big quick, right? That was a really good turn for him. Hobbs kind of missed a little trick you can do with the Lieutenant, where you play one, you put the trigger on the stack, and then you deploy the other one with the Ether Vial. Mm-hmm. You're just getting an extra counter out of things.
Yeah, we'll see if that comes back to haunt him as the game goes on. Coval taking a bit of damage here, but has a lot of nice setup. See if he can really close the deal. Obviously looking for that sword. Something to find the sword.
Yeah, I mean, this is everything he wanted to be doing on the first couple turns of the game. So if he's not able to close out the game from here,
got to worry about this matchup a little bit.
Yep.
I agree. Here's Galvanic Blast. That's going to take care of Thalia. Meanwhile, over in the Dominic Harvey versus Alex Bastecki match, 1 game apiece. Tight match here for these two 9-1 teams sitting at the top of the standings. That handsome Nick Miller token soars onto the battlefield. Coval just looking to establish a little defense here. Wants the game to just go on a bit longer. But Hobbs doing a great job of presenting a very real clock here.
So you mentioned this Nick Miller token.
Mm-hmm.
You also picked up a token recently.
I did.
A couple of the other SCG personalities also got tokens.
Absolutely.
I asked Cedric about this situation. I was just like, hey, man, where's my token?
You have been in the booth for 1 day now, sir. How quickly do you think the SCG artist staff works on these tokens?
I feel like I have a legacy behind me.
Well, this is true. You certainly have history on the SCG tour.
But Cedric's basically said my ego is big enough already, so he doesn't want to do that to me.
There you go. Cedric's a smart guy.
It's for my own good, he said.
What would be your token if you had the chance to fire one off?
Honestly, I'm not sure. When I lost in the finals of the Invitational, I think I would have made the same token that my opponent made for that event, which was the Max McVitie Clue token.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out great. Obviously, with a lot of tokens already in existence, you need to get a little more creative.
I think that's true.
Well, it makes it tough, right? Because you want to get used, so to speak.
Sure.
Use me, Brian. So, you want to use a token that's going to show up and play. But again, you don't want to just be another of 12 different Thopter tokens or something, you know?
No, absolutely. So both players firing off removal spells on that last turn. There was Dismember on the part of Hobbs, killing the Sai. Coval had a Fatal Push, taking care of the big Champion of the Parish threat. And then Coval had a nice little follow-up here in the form of Scrap Trawler, able to get some use immediately out of the Scrap Trawler by cashing in a Arkham's Astrolabe and returning a Mishra's Bauble via that Thopter Foundry. Going to catch that Mishra's Bauble again.
Yeah, and Coval's actually done a very good job of stabilizing this board with a couple removal spells.
Yeah.
It looked like it was close to getting out of control, where the creatures were just growing too big for him to be able to deal with them.
Nice little life total, too, but just the never-ending stream of Thalia's Lieutenants for Jonathan Hobbs. This is the third one played. And again, these creatures are big bodies.
But on the flip side, I mean, Brian is going to be able to chump block for several turns here.
Absolutely.
The Scrap Trawler, if it trades with something, he's going to be able to rebuy an artifact, which will give him more redraws. He already has an extra draw step coming to him from the bauble. So all of this stuff is, I don't know, it's just a very interesting back and forth.
I agree with you. And we're finding effective blocks, too. Blocks that are actually killing creatures. And Coval has to love that because he'll trade resources all day. Eventually, he'll pull ahead on that front.
And this is the type of Magic that we just love watching, where both players are kind of getting to do their thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Here's that Arkham's Astrolabe. Going to find some cards. Here's Sword of the Meek. And this is where Coval starts to turn the corner. And you saw him excitedly put that sword onto the battlefield. Only 3 attackers presently for Hobbs, and Coval still at a very comfortable life total.
Yeah, that was huge in this matchup.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Hobbs is just going to pack it in to the sword. He's seen enough. I don't blame him. I don't think he can beat that position.
Well, and that tells you that he definitely did not side into the Jailers, right? Like, if you've sided in Jailer, you take probably one more draw step. You see if you draw it to turn off this combo.
Sure.
But if it's not in your deck, yeah, you know that just one turn of these tokens is going to turn into 2 and 3 and 4, and you're never going to be able to stay ahead of it.
Yeah, fair enough. So every single match in this match now tied at 1 game apiece. As we mentioned, an incredibly tight one for these two teams sitting atop the standings at 9-1.
So we saw the Dismember that game.
Yep.
I like it.
Absolutely.
It was kind of unfortunate for him because the Sai actually made, I don't know, 3 or 4 tokens, 2 or 3 tokens, whatever it was, before he was able to get it off of the board.
Yep.
But maybe that's often going to be the case where the turn that Sai comes down, they're always going to play 1 or 2 artifacts that turn. But also, like we said, the cheap removal out of Brighton's deck was just so critical to picking off those huge creatures and giving him the time to find the last combo piece.
Yeah, and that's exactly the game plan for Coval. Buy a little time, get those combo pieces together. Coval had an explosive start that game, but I don't think we've seen the best of his deck yet, quite frankly. I think there's better things he could be doing in this matchup. He could set up his Ensnaring Bridges. He can effectively use War. We haven't seen him cast a War of Invention in this match yet, I don't believe. And
he got the Ensnaring Bridge with it.
You're right. Correct.
But
it was a bad Ensnaring Bridge.
Well, yes. But
as bad as that card can be.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to say that. No, we haven't seen it be as explosive as it can be, but I think that's part of the allure of this deck. Is like, hey, I'll play this grindy control game because a lot of my cards lend themselves to being good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I'm just going to Goldfish the spectacular draw where I combo off on you and kill you in 1 turn.
Yeah. Absolutely. Players drawing hands for game 3.
And with the removal, it just gets so much better for him in the post-sideboard games. What does the opponent name with Meddling Mage now? There's only 1 Dead of Winter, but that card's got to be very scary sometimes.
Yeah, an absolute blowout for sure.
And then the removal spells are a smattering across different cards. You still have to worry about the combo. You want to stop that. You're still worried about Ensnaring Bridge. You want to stop that. So, like I said, the post-board games just, to me, seem to get so good for this Grixis Urza's deck.
Too much for Meddling Mage to handle, basically. Too many options. Coval going to lead on Mishra's Bauble. Take a look at that top card. Phyrexian Revoker, I believe, is the reveal from Hobbs.
It's a good one to know about.
Yes, it is. We've seen it a couple times this weekend where the information from Mishra's Bauble proving to be valuable. It's going to do it for Coval's turn. Takes his draw. Headed back to Hobbs. Hobbs with Noble Hierarch on the battlefield. A little bit of extra mana going into this turn. Going to deploy Thalia. No second land for Hobbs. Human's a deck that can afford to get by with only 1 land for a little while. At some point, he's going to want to deploy multiple threats.
And we see Brian pull a fatal push forward in his hand. Anytime your opponent's playing a deck like this Grixis Urge deck where they have so many cheap spells and they just go turn 1, swamp, go, you have to imagine that they've got a card like that in their hands.
Coval just going to go ahead and main phase that fatal push so he can deploy Bauble here. Takes a peek at the top of Hobbs' deck.
And I wonder how long Brian thought about potentially killing the Noble Herrick and just leaving his opponent stranded on 1 mana.
High risk, high reward. It's unfortunate the decision had to be made before deploying the Mishra's Bauble. That would have certainly informed his decision.
Yep, the Thalia tax. Can't get around Thalia tax.
Absolutely. Hobbs going to check in with teammates here.
I think they're talking about where they want to go for dinner tonight.
Looks like the play is Phyrexian Revoker. We'll figure out what that's naming for you in just a moment. Did find the second land in the form of Horizon Canopy. And that Phyrexian Revoker is going to name Thopter Foundry, looking to shut off the combo. Here's a different combo, though. Sai, Master Thopterus, backed up by Mishra's Bauble. Third copy of Bauble played this game. Good time for it as well. Going to go ahead and cash that one in. Takes a peek at the top card. Players just clarifying timing right now. Coval being clear that he wanted to activate Bauble on his turn. Gets the draw going into Hobbs' turn.
And that's an interesting line to take. Previous now, we've always seen Coval activating the Bauble on the opponent's turn. And that's kind of a workaround for Kite Sail Freebooter.
Right.
Where if they hit you with a Freebooter,
speak of the devil,
you don't want that extra card in your hand. You don't want your opponent to have all the best options to choose from.
Well, here is Kite Sail Freebooter. Why do you think he deviated from that on this particular instance?
Honestly, I'm not sure. But Brian plays this deck a lot. He streams a lot of the time. He's been talking about this deck for a while. So it wasn't just an accident why he did that.
Hobbs making a decision with this Kite Sail Freebooter.
And this is a stacked hand, right?
Yes, it is.
Brian,
a lot of good cards, although a little pinched on blue mana as it stands.
Yeah, Brian just wants to peel a land or two.
And it looks like Mind Stone going to be the take here for the Kite Sail Freebooter. That makes sense given the texture of this hand.
Yep, it's denies him a mana, and it's a card that would cycle to find another blue source.
Sure. Hobbs going to use that Ether Vial, put a Noble Hierarch onto the battlefield, and that makes Phyrexian Revoker big enough to start getting into the red zone. Coval going to take his first damage of the game. Another Ether Vial for Hobbs, so where he was previously mana light, now is kind of mana flooded, awkwardly enough, with just 2 lands on the battlefield.
Yeah, but he's got the Horizon land on the battlefield.
Absolutely.
So with a Vial on 1 and a Vial on 2, he'll be able to draw, easily cash in that Ether Vial and not have to worry about that.
Yep. Here's a Scrap Trawler from Coval. No 4th mana source. Got to be a little scary for Coval given the battlefield he's presently facing. A second copy of Phyrexian Revoker. And a Thalia. Hobbs bringing the fire here.
Woo. Yeah, it's tough for him to attack with more than one creature right now. He really needs to get one of his Anthem effects. But the disruption is there. The human's just jamming up Urza in every possible way.
Wild stuff. Looks like Coval drew a Galvanic Blast, so has some removal options. Going to pass the turn back to Hobbs.
And Hobbs thinking about deploying the second Revoker.
Is going to do so.
Yeah, even if you draw a lieutenant, that thing's not going to get big enough to attack. I kind of like holding it.
It's going to name Psy, Master Thopterist. I think I also like holding it. And what a blowout Dead of Winter would be if Coval's able to find an additional land or remove the Thalia from the battlefield.
Yep.
Hobbs going to go ahead and cash in that Horizon Canopy now. Has Reflector Mage at the ready. Can't quite make out that other card. Well, looks like it's time for Reflector Mage. That's going to come down. And this battlefield quickly getting out of control for Hobbs. Scrap Trawler returning to Coval's hand. It's time for some attacks.
But it's funny, like, all these 1 toughness creatures, like, he can still only attack with one thing so that he gets the Noble Hero triggers.
Yeah. A little problematic. Coval happy to just make some chump blocks for the time being. Hobbs is going to deploy Unclaimed Territory. Here's Galvanic Blast, taking out Phyrexian Revoker. We'll verify what Phyrexian Revoker that targeted. I'm assuming it was the Thopter Foundry one.
Yep.
And we have confirmed it was targeting the Thopter Foundry, naming Phyrexian Revoker, meaning the Phyrexian Revoker on the battlefield names Psy Master Thopterist. Time for some more attacks. Coval just prioritizing protecting his life total at all costs. Coval going to deploy Mox Opal. Happy to see that card. Here's Sword of the Meek. Wow, what a series of draws from Coval.
And this is kind of why we were saying that holding on to that Revoker, would have been more prudent line to take.
Meanwhile, over in the James Manges, Jeremy Bertarioni match, James Manges takes down the match. Oh, here's a copy of Phyrexian Revoker from Phantasmal Image.
All right, it's going to copy Revoker. It's going to turn off the Thopter.
Thopter Foundry is the name.
But unfortunately, the Phantasmal Image is such a fragile card.
Very fragile. And here's Goblin Engineer. That's going to go ahead and find an artifact for Coval. As I expected, Pyrite Spellbomb. Giving it out to that Phantasmal Image. The clock is ticking now for Hobbs. It's funny that the deck with all these creatures on the battlefield has the clock ticking against it.
Yeah, a ton of creatures, but there's multiple 0-1s. There's a whole mess of 2-1s.
Yeah.
Like these are not effective attackers, and without a lieutenant to really pump the team, he's just not presenting a clock here.
Psy doing a beautiful job of blunting Jonathan Hobbs' offense. Here comes Reflector Mage again. It's like Coval's going to take it this time. Much more comfortable in his position.
Yeah, he knows that once the sword is online, he's going to have so much life to work with that taking 4 this turn is not a big deal.
Draw from Coval was Arkham's Astrolabe. Coval knows, though, he's going to activate Goblin Engineer on this turn, look to bring back that Pyrite Spellbomb, clear that Revoker, and get to work with this Thopter Sword combo. Does Hobbs have a way to stop Coval from going off? He draws Deputy of Detention.
Another interesting one. This is going to be kind of the third time that he's been able to disrupt this sword combo.
Here's a Goblin Engineer activation on the Pyrite Spellbomb. Pyrite Spellbomb going to re-enter the battlefield. Hobbs going to respond. It's Deputy of Detention time. No, it's not. It's concession time. Hobbs reads the writing on the wall. With access to Psy, could have protected whatever card Hobbs names, and he knew he wasn't getting out of that lock.
So yeah, anything that he tries to deputy there just gets sacrificed to Psy.
Yep.
To draw a card.
Oh wait, there's the other Revoker.
The other Revoker. I have no idea what's going on anymore. There's too many cards on this battlefield.
That's an aggressive concession, I think, from Hobbs. Trying to figure out exactly why he wants to scoop in that spot. Oh, okay. Okay, we're getting a report from the feature match. This makes much more sense.
Much more sense, yeah.
Both you and I baffled. Alex Bastecki wins this match 2-1 over Dominic Harvey, and that renders the outcome of the Coval-Hobbs match irrelevant.